everyone, and welcome back to the Enraged, and then Heroic, and then Enraged again, Comic Vault. I'm Captain Logan. Joining me this evening is my regular co-host, Austin, the Day Ghost.
It's me.
And also, guesting this time, because this is one of Dan's favorite Hulk stories, and Dan is one of our Hulk resident experts, it's Dan Torrey. Hello, Dan.
I like the Hulk a lot. He's awesome.
And those are Dan's credentials.
Yes.
Thanks for watching live, folks. If you're doing that, feel free to interact with us in the comments, and we'll be periodically checking that and seeing you guys' opinions and any extra information you might be able to add to enrich the video. And if you're watching after the fact, thanks for doing that. Tonight's Vault is requested. This is a 2-for-1 special again. We're doing the request on Tuesdays, and the last couple of these have been Vaults, so it's a comic Vault, and it's also a The Request. And Elliot Slater is our requester this evening. He asked us to finally read Planet Hulk, and I usually only read things that are about 4 or 6 issues long on the request, but I made an exception for this, partly because this is a thing that I have been kind of lacking knowledge in. Like, forever I've meant to sit down and read this, and Dan, I just never bothered because I'm not a Hulk guy, but everybody says this is great, and, you know, it's a little cosmic, and it's a sci-fi story, and, you know, the Buck Rogers of it all, I'm sure you'll really enjoy it, and I'm like, I'm sure I will. Then I just never bothered with it, and the other reason is because I didn't actually realize this was 14 issues until I accepted the request, so I was kind of stuck with it. But luckily it reads relatively quickly, and not too bad. So I don't want to open the floodgates to 15, 20 issue runs of things necessarily for requests down the road, but occasionally for a thing like this, we'll make an exception. We honestly could have done like a 3 or 4 part series on this and tackled each arc separately, and I think that would have been worth doing. But we'll do more of an overview kind of thing with it this evening. But yeah, I was really surprised that this was in 3, or I guess 4 actually, separate arcs like it is, because I always thought, I always imagined Planet Hulk was either a, like, several year run in comics, or was just kind of graphic novel sized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it did, some of the stuff that they include in the official reading order, they don't have some of, like, the lead up stuff, which I have not read all of. I don't think it's like super essential or anything, but they were like setting up this story for a while. Because Greg Pak, when he was writing this book at the time, he was talking to Joe Quesada, and Joe Quesada was reading some of the old Incredible Hulk issues, like the first 6 original series before it got canceled. And in number 4, there's an issue where Hulk like wears the gladiator armor that he wears in this arc, and it's like a half issue story about like Hulk getting stranded on another planet where he fights this like old school like Roman villain that makes him a gladiator, and then he like goes back to the status quo at the end of the issue.
Wow, that explains a lot. I didn't know about any of that.
Yeah, so
I've read that, but I forgot about it.
Yeah,
it's interesting because that look is iconic now because of this. I bet a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, no, I always thought that was really cool that they like called back to that, and then Greg Pak kind of like built a story out of it, and Quesada was like, yeah, go wild, just like make a fantasy other world, and you can like set the story on another planet, like you can take Hulk off the table for a while and just do whatever you want, and this is what he came up with, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it created his own rich mythology. I was also kind of surprised. I guess this is a dumb thing to say. The thing is called Planet Hulk, but for whatever reason, I didn't expect the entire thing to take place on one planet. I don't know why. Like, I thought maybe there would be some, like, Hulk traveling in space stuff first, or there'd be a little bit of planet hopping in the middle of it, or like, eventually we would get to whatever planet Hulk was. But no, it's basically, like a Star Trek The Original Series episode with the Hulk. Like, that's how it reads to me. It's like bread and circuses with the Hulk.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's a shift in the status quo that I think suits the character in a lot of ways, which we'll get into as we get into the discussion, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's one of those fun comic runs where we kind of get back to brass tacks with the character by taking him out of his element and telling a story that looks seemingly nothing like a standard Hulk story. Kind of like, Remender did with Captain America, 8 or 9 years ago, and we do this a lot in Marvel, especially.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I really liked the Captain America trapped in the Arnim Zola like alternate dimension run that Remender did that you mentioned. That stuff's really good.
So, you mentioned that, Dan, that the Gladiator thing comes from some of the early issues of the Hulk. It's really clear, just in the artwork, and we'll look at some of that a little bit later, that these guys are really into the earliest stuff with the Hulk, because every now and again there is a big kind of close up on Hulk's face, and it's the old school Hulk design, and it doesn't always look like that. Sometimes it's a little more rounded, but anytime we get real close up on it, or not anytime, but it tends to be like those earliest Hulk covers, which I was kind of surprised by.
Yeah, I like that too. It's kind of got the like Frankenstein-y Hulk head look, which I always think is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, this book has like a real love for old school Marvel and Hulk especially, but even with some Thor stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan, how long was Pak on this book?
So this was like setting up this story was how he got the book. And
do you know how long he was on it in setting it up? Like how many arcs that was? Because this starts in 06.
Yeah, I think it was just one arc, and then he did
okay.
this, and then he did World War Hulk, and then after that, he takes over the main Incredible Hulk book, and he's on it for a while. And they do some spin-off books. They do a book about his son, Sakaar, or Scar, I think his name is. Yeah, he appeared in a What If issue, and he's basically Hulk Conan in the planet that Hulk leaves after it's like savage and civilization gets reset, and he's like a savage barbarian warrior that's like the son of Hulk. Yeah. So, and that stuff's pretty cool.
And that name is super appropriate given that he is on a planet called Sakaar, but he's called Green Scar the whole time. And I felt like that from Pak must have been intentional, that sounds similar to the name of the planet and its people.
Yeah. So, and then I think he left around the time that Jeff Loeb got the book, because I don't think it was selling very well, and Jeff Loeb started doing the Red Hulk stuff. And, that period was not the best.
Yeah, I knew Loeb came after, because I remember Eric's review back in the day of how you go from World Breaker Hulk to Hulk getting beat up by Red Hulk at the start of that arc.
Yeah.
So this period in general in Marvel is kind of a blind spot for me. Going back, over the last few years especially, I've read a little bit of stuff from this period. I think some of Bendis' Daredevil must have been in the mid-2000s during this.
Yes.
And obviously I've read some Ultimate Spider-Man and stuff, but there's still a lot of stuff. I've never read Secret Invasion and like a lot of the really major stuff from right around this period. I got onto New Comics about 4 years after this. So I have lots of questions, Dan, about status quo surrounding this. Because I knew Red Hulk was still around and doing things when I jumped into comics, and I never knew how he became that or what that was. And so the first thing I wanted to ask you is, I'm wondering if Red Hulk has anything to do with the Sakarans and their being red, or if that's a separate thing and has nothing to do with that whole thing.
As far as I understand, because I read Jeff Loeb's first arc and then thought it was so terrible that I dropped it. But
so it's not a problem that I don't know this then.
Yeah. So at the beginning of that book, it's like a mystery. Like it's the typical Jeff Loeb, mystery, like Long Halloween and Dark Victory and Hush. Like that's repeated again, but with who is the Red Hulk? He knows all this information about Bruce Banner's backstory.
Literally all I know about the Red Hulk is who it is.
Yeah. And the hilarious thing is when they finally reveal who he is, like a lot of fans were like, what happens to General Ross's mustache when he transforms into the Red Hulk? Does it recede into his skin? That's really weird.
He had to lose it so that nobody would know it was him, because if he had
Yeah.
that mustache, you have two choices. It's him or Jameson. That's it.
Yeah.
No,
And
that's a
then
big thing I know about Red Hulk. That, and instead of getting stronger, the angrier he gets hotter.
yeah, he gets like
Oh.
fire powers.
Yeah, which is just very strange.
That sounds like a low choice.
It's not as threatening when you say, you know, I get hotter the angrier I get.
No, it sounds oddly narcissistic in a way. Like, I get mad, I'm really attractive. I don't really understand that.
If he gets really angry, the mustache comes back.
The more important question, though, for the sake of this, and by the way, we'll spoil everything tonight, so major stuff. So if you haven't read this and you don't want to be surprised by anything after we get done with this lengthy preamble, go read the book and then come back later and watch this. If you're watching live, I'd hate for you to have to turn off a live video, but you probably knew what you were getting into. Doing a vault. But anyway, Dan, the more important question is, and Austin couldn't answer this for me either because he also hasn't read Hulk from this period, is how exactly do we get to the status quo of Banner being receded into Hulk? Because I knew it was like that for quite a while, but I never knew how that happened.
So the idea is supposed to be, I don't think it's articulated as well in this story. It's kind of more implied, and then they kind of like talk about it later in Pak's run. But the anger that he feels at the Avengers for sending him into space sustains him as being the Hulk permanently for most of the time, and he grows as a like presence in Banner's psyche to the point where he can like be articulate and speak and do all the things you see him do in this book. So he, like, because the Hulk becomes intelligent and has that rage to sustain him, he can control going back and forth between Banner, like you see in the book. So that's what the idea is supposed to be.
So how long has he been in space then? Because the sense I got was that he got shot out like right before this happens. Like the previous arc, was he already in space for a while, or would readers have been just as confused as I was as to why Hulk had taken over?
I don't think he'd taken over when he was in the rocket. I think it's after he crashes.
Oh, interesting. Because I got the sense that must have been there for a while. Okay, because I mean, that would be then one of my very few complaints about this book, is that it's not made super clear why that's going on. It's made clear, at least by the end, that Banner is like fully still in there and conscious and knows everything that's going on, but like we don't even see him until there's kind of a hint that he is changing back and forth slightly when he first becomes king in like the second to last issue of this, but we don't actually see him turn back into Banner until he gets married.
That's what you miss in the giant size
special. Okay.
Yeah.
There's one bit of this I didn't read because I didn't know about it.
Yeah, there's an issue where Banner and Hulk have a conversation in his head for like 10 pages.
I needed that, apparently. Oops.
And the Hulk, and there's like, like classic Hulk like Mindscape stuff where they're like talking. It's pretty good, but that's like in the middle of the story. So it's just that moment and then the one at the end that you were talking about. Those are the only times we see him.
Okay. So when you say in the middle, it's probably like right before the big battle with the Red King.
Or it is before that.
Maybe a little bit before that. Even.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway.
Yes.
Hey, Austin, this is your first time reading this as well. Why don't you give us a little bit of a plot synopsis, would you?
Okay, Planet Hulk is about a planet where there's Hulk. He crashes on it, and he's forced into basically slavery as a gladiator, and then he is kind of put through some tests, and he's the Hulk, so he's always angry, and he wants to get out of it and just be free. And shenanigans happen, and he helps to take over the planet eventually, and it becomes a literal planet Hulk.
I mean, kind of. Well, I guess that is pretty literalized by the end, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about this later, but the way this story is bookended is really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't remember the last time I read a book that or a story that I was enjoying as much as I was, and then realized how much better it was or how much better it was made by the ending, which is actually, in a way, almost like a coda or an epilogue, even though it's, super insanely important and changes everything about Hulk's character arc. But I think it's really intelligent, the structure of this, because it's in kind of a typical 3-act structure with each of the 4-issue arcs, and then there's a 2-issue, what initially feels like an epilogue at the end of it. But I don't know. I guess these days it's okay to have a big giant plot point, Dan, in an after credit scene in a movie like we did with Far From Home. That's essentially what this is. This is like the end of Far From Home.
Yes. No. The whole story is very tightly plotted, and when we were talking about it earlier, when you read it, even though it's like 15 issues or 14 or whatever, it moves at a clip. Like, you can get through this. It is a page turner, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read this in about an hour and a half, because I went in because I started it yesterday. I was like, oh God, we got to do this tomorrow. I forgot. Well, it's probably like a 6-issue arc. It's fine. And then I look at the issue count. I was like, oh, it's 14. And then I read it in an hour and a half total. So it was super easy.
Yeah,
I also listened to the
because
Lord of the Rings soundtrack while reading it, and it was perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. In the 13 years I've been doing this, I don't recall very often having discussions about what music we were listening to while we read a thing, but you'd think that would come up a lot more often, because it can certainly really impact the reading. Like, Dan, there's an album, and nobody's going to know what this is, but there's a Waterdeep album that I was listening to back in the day when you and I were reviewing the Simonson run. And to this day, I cannot listen to that album without thinking Thor. Like that and Thor are tightly connected to me now, and it's not even appropriate Thor music, but it feels like Thor now. Like, it's a real sleepy kind of album, but every time I hear it now, I'm thinking Thor.
That's awesome.
This, I felt the need to go for something kind of more metal, and that was one thing that I thought Ragnarok kind of got right with adapting some of this material, is that's the kind of music you would want behind it. The way they sold that, of course, was genius. So I was like, I don't really want to go for 80s metal, because it's not my thing. So what I'm gonna listen to, and I went to Serge Tankian from System of a Down, one of his solo records, and I don't know if I'll have the same thing I did with that Waterdeep album with this, but it was kind of perfect. That was a fun thing to listen to while reading this. Anyway.
Awesome.
You should have just listened to the same song on loop, and it would have been like Ragnarok, because they could only get one song. And I mean, Led Zeppelin is awesome, but...
That's true, but the way they sold that movie, and I don't want to just review that again, but the way they sold that movie, you would have expected it to have a compilation album of old classic rock songs like Guardians did, and then you go to the movie and it's that one song.
Very true.
But anyway, so yeah, super tightly plotted. We were talking about this reading at a clip. Part of that is because it's certainly real action driven, but kind of deceptively so, because for a thing that looks so much like a big sci-fi, or I should say science fantasy, right? Because I mean, Dan said fantasy earlier, and you're absolutely right about that. It's absolutely a fusion, and it's. I mean, I kind of hesitate even saying science fantasy, because that suggests almost more of a Star Wars kind of thing, and it's still about the kind of what makes a man question that a lot of science fiction is about. So it's both. I mean, it's science fantasy, but it's also science fiction.
it's the Jack Kirby Thor version of science fantasy. Like it's the you have characters that are fantastical. There's like things that some kind of resemble magic. There's like prophecies and stuff in this, and old political institutions like the emperor and the senate and all these kind of things, because it's got to have the gladiatorial historical grounding sort of thing. I agree with you, Austin, in that it has so much love for a lot of that early Marvel stuff. And I was reading it this time, and I noticed how influenced it was by like the Marvel Conan stuff, because apparently, like, the sun character that they do after this is basically that character on this planet, and Hulk basically has the like arc of Conan in the John Milius movie, where he like gets sold into slavery, becomes a gladiator, trains on the Wheel of Pain, or in this case the Academy, and then he eventually becomes the king of the planet. He's like the savage warrior king, and he like wins the heart of the noblewoman by the end too. Like it has that fantasy element to it, which I really like a lot.
Well, I don't even
I was
know anything
thinking
about
a lot
Conan.
about Conan as well.
And I know
because
enough
we
that I
just did
kept thinking that while I
commentary.
was reading this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it has that like metal dark fantasy edge that Conan has, like you mentioned, would suit this musically. Like it's definitely got more of a, darker fantasy, because like the emperor is evil in this, and like there's slavery and lots of like really medieval, dark ways in which the society works, which I thought were cool. There was like natives that are being genocided by the main race that lives on the planet. And they like have this sort of inborn hatred towards each other that becomes difficult for the Hulk to like negotiate between the two of them, and that's one of the ways in which he learns how to be a king. All that stuff is like really cool and serves the character and the story that Pak's telling about him.
Yeah, and somehow it's not oppressively dark and unfun to read, and it easily could have been that.
Yeah.
It's kind of shocking just how entertaining this is, and how well it strikes a tonal balance. Because all of that darkness is there, and then by the end, it's like a massive gut punch and one of the most tragic things you've read in a comic book. And
yes.
But tempered by a lot of levity and just a coolness factor. Like before, we were talking about the really intentional, over the top, in your face, metal with a capital M that Dark Knight's metal was. You had Planet Hulk, like it was already you already had a thing doing that, and just there's such a sense of style and confidence with this, and I don't know how they even got away with that, because if I sat down and tried to fuse all those things together, I'd be a little bit nervous about it, and this somehow does that effortlessly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very good fusion of all these different things, and like Dan said, I saw a lot of Conan in this, probably also because I just watched that movie for the first time.
Yeah, we watched it the other night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But given how how much exciting action is here, and how many full page spreads that you have of just Hulk being angry and breaking things and freaking out on something, sometimes more than one of those even in a single issue, just the kind of pin-up stuff, you wouldn't expect this book to be about as much stuff as it is. And there's under a lesser pen, I could have seen it feeling really redundant, and I feel like repetition is used is served in a really smart way here. We're talking about the idea of monsters, the question of whether the Hulk is a monster or a hero, and that obviously is kind of a reflection of duality of man, which the Hulk always is. Somehow, I feel like this story gives us the Hulk as both Hyde and a Frankenstein monster. Like it's both, and I don't know if the Hulk is always that way, but that was really kind of just came out to the forefront to me, where I'm like, oh, it's Mary Shelley and it's Jekyll and Hyde.
That was the original
that's
concept.
a big part of yeah.
And Kirby created him. That's exactly what they were going for, was a combination between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
I mean, if you don't care or know anything about Hulk, I don't think this is a bad story to read first, because it seems to be weirdly a proof of concept almost, in like getting it back to basics almost. And like I kept thinking that while I was reading it and wondering if I was reading too much into it, and then you get to the end and you find out that some of the Avengers have literally recreated the Hulk a second time. And it's like, oh, we did almost I don't want to say like a second origin, but we gave the Hulk an opportunity for change that he nearly takes, or that he actually does take, and then he's broken out of it. Where the whole book, he's fighting the urge to just fight for the sake of fighting, partly because he likes it, partly because he's vengeful, partly you know all these different reasons, and then he's given chances to live in peace. And he's in a place by the end where he finally takes it in being the king, and he's not made too un-Hulk-like in doing that. You still buy that he's mad enough to stay in Hulk form and to be as powerful as he is still. That's a tough balance, but it manages it. And then you get to the very end, and you find out that Reed Richards and et al. Have put a bomb in the ship that they sent the Hulk in, where they weren't just going to send him away, they were actually going to intentionally kill him. And and it's the exact same mistake that Banner made in the first place when he creates the Hulk. So not only does the story have this fantastic bookend, but we bookend all the way back to the beginning of Hulk, and it's kind of a masterstroke.
It is, and I love how tragic the ending is, because that's what the Hulk needs to be. The Hulk is a monster, and that's why he is horrifying. Like the horrifying aspect of the character is something that I think some versions miss, and that's why I like the character. And there's always that thing too of the Hulk being the metaphor for like the like nuclear weapons, of course, because he's created by a gamma bomb and all those sorts of things. I really liked how he was like this prophesized, thing that would destroy the entire world like a nuclear bomb would, and then it happens, and it's a thing that explodes like a mushroom cloud. So I was like, oh, that stuff is, it's just perfect,
Yeah, but he's also he's a monster, but he's not a monster all at the same time, right? Like that's the whole question through all of this seems to be whether or not he even has a choice in that, and in being the personification of the rage of a human being. Obviously, again, it's about that duality thing. So I really liked because I hate prophecy stories. In fact, there's a bunch of like science fiction cliches in this that Greg Pak uses and then makes as uncliche as I've seen them in a lot of things. So he's like, okay, well, we're gonna have the dumb prophecy thing again, and we're gonna ask the really standard free will versus predestination question, like you always do in stories like this. And sometimes, I mean, that's a thing that we should tackle, of course. Sometimes that's great, but sometimes we also use it as a crutch instead of telling a real story. And he goes, okay, so there's going to be a prophecy, and simultaneously the prophecy is going to be about, it's not even two prophecies, it's at the same time. The prophecy is going to be about a creature or being or something that destroys civilization, and a creature or being or something that saves civilization. And maybe this guy is both of them at the same time. We know they're both supposed to happen, and guess what, at the end it is the same guy, and it does happen like days apart from each other.
Well, and what I love about that too is the interesting thing about Hulk as a metaphor is that he's the personification of all of the dark recesses of the human psyche, like rage, base emotions, that humans still have like left over inside them from being creatures that needed to survive in the wild. And he's an animalistic beast, so I liked that humanity has the capacity to be an animalistic beast like the Hulk, or a brilliant scientist like Bruce Banner. And people like Banner create civilization, they build it up, and people like Hulk are the ones that destroy it. Conquerors, people like he becomes the king in this. He There's wars because of him. You know what I mean? The civilization he destroyed was evil, but he still does destroy it. Man destroys and builds civilization. It's like really, there's some really well done themes in this book that I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, it's oddly deep for a thing that is, again, as metal as this is, and has as many full page spreads that as it does, that seem to be mostly there for fanboys to go, wow, that's cool, and I just wouldn't have expected a book as thoughtful as this is. Like what you're talking about is the Mary Shelley of it all. Is like it's not just the monster within, but it's also the created monster by a scientist trying to play God. Like it's all of that at the same time. And so the Hulk is has Banner still inside of him, but it also kind of suggests that the Hulk himself is a three-dimensional realized person, and or arguably could be, and doesn't trust that himself, and doesn't even know if he wants to be that. He likes being the monster. He's like, he's conflicted about that, at best, of course, where it's like, he's tried to be the hero, but the people that used him to our heroes to be the hero wouldn't let him try to keep doing that. They just sent him off as the monster. But when he's just the monster, he's not allowed to do that either, which is why he just wants to be left alone. And it's just really interesting to me that you got a story like this that actually lets him kind of change by the end and live, not like a normal person, because like now he's a king and he's got all of this responsibility, and he's still gonna run things like he's the Hulk, but like he's taken a wife, and he's he's even stopped people from killing for revenge. He's really grown by the end of this. And the Mary Shelley of it is, when you we do this in science fiction with robots and stuff, obviously, all the time too, how much of the human condition is left in something created by a person to be a self-aware creature because it was a person that built it in the first place. And I thought the smartest thing that he didn't do in this book, because I kind of expected this, was Hulk doesn't have to turn back into Banner to solve problems or to do the right thing. That never happens. And I really thought it was going to.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a lot better in the way you kind of track Hulk not really caring about anything, and the way he kind of grows and starts to learn how to solve problems without just punching them because he's angry. But also by doing that.
Yeah, he never stops being a warrior. He doesn't like suddenly turn into a diplomat. He's like he's capable of doing that, but the way he does it is like pitting two groups of people into fighting him, and then he's like, everyone shut up and listen to me, and then they're like, okay.
And that was so endearing. It's like sometimes the simplest solutions.
Yes, exactly. Because like at first the like high priest council that is responsible for creating like the Imperial Guard, they're like, we don't know if like we trust this guy to be the king. Like his new order is already collapsing. The two like racial groups are at each other's throats. The natives that have that are like a dying race, and the like current people that did that to them in the past, and they're like all angry at each other. And the priests are like, yeah, he can't like resolve any disputes. Like he's just a unwieldy monster. And then he proves that he is a monster, like you said, Cap. He is a monster, but he's also not at the same time. He can mediate between people in his own like way.
Yeah, like which might suggest, and I think this was always, tell me if you think I'm wrong about this, Dan, part of the point of the Hulk is that we need our dark sides, we need our rage. There's time, there's a, to everything there is a season. You have to have some of that. The Hulk keeps in, maybe it's kind of scary, proving that you can use it more often than most of us would be comfortable with, because that's his personality and that's what he was built to do. But the idea that he was only built to, punch and kill and and get revenge on things does not seem to track. Does not seem to be the case.
Yeah. One of the things I really liked about this too is it's kind of a fan thing, but I think it's really cool. There's, I don't know, you guys ever heard of the Peter David miniseries called Future Imperfect?
Oh,
No.
I have heard of it. Yeah, because that's where you get like the old bearded Hulk, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Where he's like
I've seen that, but I didn't know what that was called.
Yeah, he's like an emperor in the future, and he has like the really long gray beard, and he's like killed all the Avengers, and he like basically rules the world. And he's like a tyrant in that, and he's like evil. But I liked that this was kind of the development, like the long, slow burn development of Hulk into that kind of like status quo as a king, but not being the evil, mad, crazy one that he is in that book. I thought that was a really cool thing.
Well, I like that the book takes everything on Hulk's terms with almost his own sense of morality.
Yeah.
Like, it's not held whatsoever by modern, like, sensibilities and expectations and things. In exactly the same way is, like, a Worf in Next Generation or something, where it's like, here's a character who's part of a warrior race. He's got a different set of rules. He thinks about these things differently.
Yes. No, and it makes sense why he feels like so comfortable in a place like this, because they're kind of they're a civilization that has some advanced technology, but they're clearly still stuck in parts of what is a reflection of humanity's barbaric past, with all of the gladiatorial old school Roman stuff that they got going on in this too.
Did you guys find yourselves wishing that we had spent more time with the Hulk as king status quo instead of it instead of that being wiped away as quickly as it was?
I do think we could have held on that longer, but at the same time, I do think it works in this piece. I do see it as being something that could have been like a Nightfall. Like you said, either at the start of the stream or before we started, Cap, about how you thought this was just the status quo of Hulk for like a few years, like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I wish it was that. Yeah, I do. I agree 100% with you, Austin. I think it does work really well as the piece, but at the same time, it would have been cool and maybe been a little bit more tragic if you told stories about like the Hulk really developing into a like wise and fair ruler, like you see hints of at the end when he kind of like gets everyone to cooperate, and like the world looks like it's turning around, everyone's friendly, a lot of the old divisions between the people in the society have went away, and then immediately it gets destroyed, which is tragic, but it would have been maybe more tragic to see that, like, what it was like living in that society for a little longer,
See, I'm really conflicted about it, because I think the way it is, it's of course super tragic, because the Hulk finally gets something he didn't even think he wanted, which is peace and happiness, and to not have to fight anymore. And then that's immediately ripped away from him. It does kind of risk looking like this is not Hulk's standard status quo, and we're not allowed to live here for too long, because if we did that, we'd get too far away from what the Hulk is. Like, I think people were really impressed when Superman New Krypton went on as long as it did, because it's like, wow, we're going to be away from standard Superman status quo for like 3 years? That's nuts. Or however long it was. So I'm with you. It would have been kind of gutsy to do it that way, and it would have been tragic in a different way. On the other hand, the idea here is, as soon as Hulk, as soon as like the honeymoon is over, essentially, and like literally, and it's horrible because like he loses his wife and everything. But as soon as the honeymoon is over, the Hulk has to go back to being the monster, and immediately he goes back to what he's been saying the whole book that we thought he'd gotten over, which is when somebody does something really horrible to you, you make them pay for as long as you can. That phrase keeps coming up. and you think maybe he's done with that, and then you get to the end, and now he's there again, and he's going to go do that, and like how great of a cliffhanger is that? He's going to go do that to the people that we thought were our heroes, and we're starting to question, their morality. And their righteousness or whatever. And then my question to you, Dan, would be, if we let this go too long, would we buy him snapping out of it like he does here, as quickly as he does? Like, if he gets too wise, too tempered, that might seem too easy. It might be too much of a light switch. Too. I don't know, and that's why I'm so conflicted about it. Is I don't know if you could have done it that way. I don't know that World War Hulk could look like it does, and I haven't read that, but I don't know if you could get to that event the way that event has to be if this lasts more than 2 issues.
Yeah, I would have been interested. I think Marvel was really interested in paying off Hulk coming back to fight the Avengers, because World War Hulk is basically just John Romita Jr. drawing like King Hulk fighting all of the Marvel Universe for 4 issues. Like, it's disappointing to me in that Planet Hulk is like really about things, it has themes, there's really great character work in that book, and then World War Hulk is just all action, and then Pax Run just kind of peters out after that, which is unfortunate, but I'm of 2 minds about it too. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't even imagine like how World War Hulk goes without him like just murdering the Marvel Universe, or the other way around. Like, it's weird to think that you get this, and then he's going to go back and fight them, and then eventually we're going to get something more status quo Marvel with that.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued to read it.
As tightly woven as this is, and as good of a handle as Pak has on the mythology and lore that he's developing, if you go back and look at this after a first read, I skimmed it again and was noticing all this wonderful setup and payoff stuff that's established real early that I didn't even remember, especially just like how the planet works, and the politics and the religion and all of that. But there were very, very few weird conveniences or technical issues I had with this. But one question I do have, and maybe I just missed something, is why did it take so long for the bomb to go off in the ship? Like, I wasn't sure why he crashes, and then he's like, I mean, it's kind of fun that's got a bomb in it that's going to kill that planet, and people immediately are after that ship, and he's like, you can have it, and if they'd only taken it, the story would have been over a lot earlier than it is. But it's so that's amusing, but I didn't know why it took so long for it to go off. Or if like there was something he had to do that made it, because somebody like presses a button, and that was maybe a little bit too easy, and the message from the Illuminati comes back up again. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know if it was that triggered it, or if it was on a timer, or does anybody know?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. That was my big like, oh, that's kind of convenient thing, but. Is it like a bomb?
Senior Six says it wasn't a bomb. I thought it was a bomb. I thought the whole idea was that he was supposed to be like...
Yeah. I thought it was just that, like, his ship exploded.
Yeah, it's a fusion reactor, so it's like got nuclear technology.
Yes, of course, but I just mean that they rigged it up to act as a bomb. I guess is what I meant.
They do say that at the end. Yeah, he thinks that in his head in one of the narrations.
I mean, is it going to turn out that that's not the case and the whole thing was a misunderstanding?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because suddenly what Mr. Fantastic, or whoever it was, I forget now, was saying in that message, it seemed to have, like, another layer to it. Because it seemed like he was just talking about him going off into space, but then it seemed like he was talking about him dying. Like, we're really sorry we had to do this, but we felt like we had no choice, even though you just saved the planet.
Yeah, he says that when the Hulk is going there, that they sent him to an uninhabited planet, like with any intelligent life. It was just animals and resources, so that he could live there alone for the rest of his life. And the ship like gets blown off course and goes through like that portal
Oh,
thing
it
they
got
show in
blown off.
space.
That's right. I forgot
Yeah,
about that because
yeah.
I was like, how did they miscalculate that badly? Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. It went through a
So
portal.
they weren't like sending him to that hostile like planet necessarily. They were just that's at least what they said anyway.
Well, I knew that, but I just thought that if they intentionally wanted the ship to explode, it seems the timing is convenient. But everybody in the comments is saying that there is an answer, but it's a spoiler for World War Hulk. So I'm not gonna know until I read that book.
Oh, true. Yeah, I just don't remember. I've only read World War Hulk once.
And Senior Six says it was Meek who overloaded it. Maybe that's the spoiler. Maybe he did it on purpose.
Oh.
Stupid me.
He was an interesting character in
He
this.
was, yeah. Yeah, a lot of twists and turns that I wasn't expecting with some of the supporting cast. How did you guys feel about? We should talk about this, about the fact that this is yet another kind of backdoor team book where it's ostensibly a solo Hulk story, but very early we have to establish a team and already start using that word, because I was kind of impressed with this was another balancing act. I was kind of impressed with how everybody gets a lot to do and they seem like fully realized characters and they've got full on complex backstories. But it also, like, the stuff I'm finding most interesting about it that I'm wanting to talk about is the Hulk stuff. It's still his book.
Yeah,
He's never in the background.
What I like about the team stuff is that early on, there's a lot more focus on them character-wise, while the Hulk is kind of shut off from everybody, and then he kind of grows out of that as the book goes. So I thought that really worked. I just have more interesting characters at the start, while the Hulk's just kind of like, I don't care about any of this. Leave me alone.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Where they recede a little bit more into the background as he is getting more into the fore, and also you can't ever really tell who's going to be most important, and like you do lose people in this. And early on, I kind of expected the whole team to stick around, but like somebody dies and they get replaced, and then that character's death is the tragic backstory for another character, and I don't know, like it's your standard kind of writing 101 stuff that a lot of writers miss these days, unfortunately. Everything's here for a reason, and there's no detail there without revealing something.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I think Meek is my favorite supporting character in the book because his character arc is pretty tragic and sad, and I liked that a lot as him kind of like being the Hulk's initial sidekick. He's this like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, very optimistic, and like looks up to the Hulk as a hero, and then he's eventually like twisted into this creature of like hatred and resentment by the end of the book, and is clearly like scheming in the background still, and like doesn't trust anyone because he sort of emulated the Hulk's initial philosophy about like making people pay when they hurt you and not being able to let go of your rage and like resentment you hold towards people, your hatred.
And then ultimately Hulk won't let him do that,
Yes, exactly. Like I thought all that was very well done and
which
very
I'm going to assume is the reason that he made the bomb go off.
Yes, I would assume so too.
It
Yeah,
seems like
bug.
there's a real clear Hulk parallel in him, and you could probably make the case that I don't know how much you'd have to stretch for everybody, and I'm not going to sit here and try to do that, but you could probably make the case for most of, if not all of the supporting cast, that they're reflections of the Hulk in some way, and not just generically they're outcasts or they're monsters.
Yeah. I really like that Korg is with the alien species that Thor fights in his first appearance. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that's neat.
I like that when they do the flashback, they have like an older school art style for it.
Yeah, it looks like Kirby art kind of. It's wicked cool.
Yeah, I haven't been showing any art at all, but I'll jump over to that.
Yeah, it's maybe like a bit more cartoony in its colors, but it's definitely trying to emulate that.
Yeah, it's wicked cool. But yeah, all the supporting cast like had really cool things to do, and I really liked the romance between him and the woman that is like the Imperial Guard at the beginning.
I love it so much.
Yeah,
It's
I
one of
like
the
how
best romances I've read in a long time. And a lot of it is
yeah.
because I didn't realize it was going to be a romance, and when I flipped back through it, I felt like an idiot for not picking up on that right away. I'm showing a panel right now where they're almost like starstruck, looking into each other's eyes, and she's trying to kill him. It's
Yeah.
like real early on in the book, and it's like clearly we're setting up a romance. And if these were actors on film, I would have picked up on it. But in a comic book, somehow I completely missed it. And then the other thing I didn't realize was just how completely immersed and involved she is in almost every facet of this story. And
Yeah.
I kept losing her. And if you go back and flip through, she's all over it. Like that's
Yeah.
being developed all the way through, really intricately.
I really liked how she kind of starts out. You think she's just sort of a henchman to the Emperor, and then you realize that she, like, through her actions before it's revealed that she's like has one of those slave chips in her that like she's basically being controlled by the Emperor. Um, she's still the most like noble and like moral person in the room. Like when the Emperor is just like burning citizens alive in the street, she's
Yeah.
like, "We can't be doing this. Stop," you know. And she like actually cares about the like citizens. And I love that the thing that disillusions her with the Emperor, and she goes through that arc where she, you know, falls in love with the Hulk and joins his cause instead, is she sees the Emperor intentionally just sacrifice a whole village of people to like try and get the Hulk, and he just doesn't care about anyone. And she can't, that's not compatible with her worldview and how much she cares about people, you know.
Well, and there's a great parallel between them there because they're both like being used by someone else for their own means, allegedly, at least from Hulk's
Yeah.
perspective, and definitely from hers. But you're right, like the difference between them is that like she's a hero first and a monster second, but you only see the monster until she gets out from under his grip. Like they do a really good job of making her simultaneously really likable, but you also have no idea what her like true ideology is for a really long time.
Yeah. I liked her as a romance a lot too, because if you notice like the stuff that is, oh, actually I don't know if this is in the giant size issue or not, but do you guys remember any of the like stuff of Hulk being taunted in his head about all of the like past romances he's had that didn't work out with like not like normal everyday
No,
women?
I did not
Okay.
get to read that
That's the
part.
giant sized stuff.
Oh, okay. So in that, he like Banner like taunts him with that, being like, "Look at all of the people that you've tried to like put into your life, and it always ends tragically. Don't get involved in any of these people. Just like go and be the monster." And I like that it ends up working out for him at the end, even though he's able to have a relationship with this woman because she like understands him, and when she sees Banner, she still embraces him and still loves him. Like she loves every aspect of him, you know. And the Hulk is used to being the like rejected, monstrous like creature, that part of humanity that no like woman would ever want to love, you know. That's like one of the tragic things about the Hulk too. For him to like finally win and get that, it's like really cool, even though it ends very quickly thereafter, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the important things to note about this character is that it would be really easy to misunderstand him and think that he's just Wolverine. That it's you know, because of his own poor choices, or even like a Deadpool or something, like because of his own poor choices, like everybody that he gets close to dies. That's not the Hulk, and that's also the Mary Shelley of it, is that he's actually really the victim.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's very Universal Monsters in that way. Absolutely.
And this takes it a little bit further in that he does seem to maybe have a choice, or there's questions about that. But when you get to the end, and it turns out that he is sort of the world breaker at the same time as he's the Sakaar son, it's not his fault, like, in either direction.
Yeah.
Or is it, if it turns out that that it's Meek that blew up the ship because he stopped the revenge thing? But then that's really interesting, because that would be him trying to do the right thing, and it comes crashing down on him. Like, it's weird how we always talk about how the Hulk isn't really a superhero but lives in a superhero universe, and isn't it weird all of the different characters in this that he's got elements of or kind of embodies? Like, his because of the, like, outcast, people don't understand him because he's different thing. He's got the X-Men, but he's also the Punisher because he wants to get revenge on anyone that does something horrible for him, and constantly, like, that's just the Punisher. But, like, there's, you know, and he's trying to do the right thing and be responsible. There's some Spider-Man there. Like, it's weird how he's all of the Marvel Universe in this, and then when you get to the end, he wants to go kill the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
Am I stretching when I say that? Like, I think that's kind of what it is.
You're saying it's ultimately a very deep story about a man who just hates himself.
That's what I said. Sure. That's just what I said. But what do you think, Dan? Like, am I reaching?
I didn't think that, but yeah, possibly. For sure.
You get a gold star cap. Good job.
Possibly you're reaching. You're almost certainly reaching.
But yeah, I mean, I just really like all of the Marvel Universe stuff that Pak clearly has reverence for, that he's pulling from in here, like, in every
especially because he's bringing in so much of his own stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if the Sakaar was ever a thing before this, or if that was like a tiny deep pull thing on one page that he blew up into a whole mythology, but
as far as I understand, the, like, only, like, alien race thing he takes from early Marvel stuff is the Korg aliens, I think. Oh no, but there's the Brood there too, so there's some stuff. But
see, you were talking earlier about your favorite of the supporting cast. I want to say the Brood is mine just because of the audacity of taking one of those and making it a character.
Well,
it's so good.
And the Brood has a character arc, which
is
awesome.
It's awesome.
It, like,
and she's shockingly sympathetic.
Yes, and she, like, looks like she wants to, like, fall in love with Meek by the end too. Like, they go into that.
Oh, that's
together.
true. Well, no, yeah. I think they were gonna go have sex, is what I think was about to happen, and then which I never thought I would say, and then he just has to conveniently run into a panel so that we can make the rest of the story happen.
Yeah, like, it's crazy to me, because she, like, was talking about eating him and all that stuff before, you know.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
It's weird, but, like,
Austin's grossed out, but it's very interesting.
Oh no, that wasn't a grossed out. That was there's a joke you could make there, but I won't do it.
But yeah, no, all the characters, the supporting characters, have really cool character arcs and places, you know, things to do in the story.
I thought the most impressive, talking about characters made sympathetic that are initially you would expect to just be one-dimensional, evil baddies. How did we make the Spikes as an alien race, like, sympathetic and sad and tragic, and you were kind of glad by the end that even though they murdered bazillions of people and caused lots of genocide, that they got to go off and live in peace? Just all they wanted to do was go back to space. They were basically like tiny Galactuses, right? Like, they were just trying to survive.
They were like Starro in the Suicide Squad.
That's actually true. They are like that. I didn't think of that.
And they also want what the Avengers tried to give Hulk, which was just, I want to go on a rocket and live in peace somewhere where we won't hurt anyone.
That's true. Yeah, and they're monsters that aren't understood, that have to be monsters to survive, and that's and the nature nurture thing, like, that's their nature, but they feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So they have compassion. That was the last thing I ever expected. And at first I was thinking the main bad guy in this, the Red King, is really typical evil, cruel king guy. And then I'm like, but it's intentional. There's a like you have to do that because you need a real monster in this when all of the actual monsters there's more to them than that. And that guy didn't have to be like that, but like chose to and let himself get, you know, that screwed up and corrupted. Like I think he has to be as one-dimensional as he is. And I think he isn't actually. I think it was his choice to be that way.
I think he is the perfect embodiment of what kind of people this world can create in the way that it is. Like, I mean, look at a lot of, you know, this is somewhat influenced by Roman stuff. I mean, look at how many of the Roman emperors were depraved maniacs that would do like things like kill people in the streets just like this guy just does, just not in a giant like metal suit with flamethrowers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it would have been nice if there was some talk about what he was like before he became the king or something. Where, like, I want to assume that he wasn't always that way. Like, you know, he's not really a sympathetic character. But again, I'm not sure that he has to be. Like, I kind of want to give it a pass in this case.
There is that one flashback that shows him when he puts the slave thing on the queen, Hulk's queen. They show him as a little kid, and he's like basically Joffrey from Game of Thrones. He's like a depraved lunatic even when he was a kid.
Oh, I forgot about that. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So he's just a bad dude.
Well, it's like I always say, what's the point of having power if you don't abuse it?
But yeah, like I said earlier, I couldn't get my mind around how thoughtful this was, and I'm realizing more and more that a lot of, especially superhero stories, the things I'm about to mention, I've talked about 100,000 times in Rewind. There are, but I don't think I've ever broken it down quite like this. So give me just a second to do this, because this is a thought I had today reading this. So there seem to be, to me, three kind of basic moral quagmires, like kind of existential conflicts that are at the heart of the majority of stories that bother to have a moral conundrum. And it's either, and each of them are on a different kind of scale. So you have the nature versus nurture thing, which tends to be individual. It speaks to the human condition, but on an individual basis, different people in a lot of stories seem to be able to, seem to sometimes be controlled by their nature or by nurture, or it's hard to tell which of those things it is, right? And then you have the free will versus predestination thing, which is more of a broad scale human condition question, where it's like, as human beings, as all of us, do we have free will, or are we controlled by destiny? And then you have the grand sociological or societal question of freedom versus security, the Winter Soldier thing, and this has all three of them, and I very rarely see all three of them as in the forefront as they are in this. And again, in a thing this action driven, it's crazy, but they're all there.
Yeah. It just speaks to the quality of the setting and like the fact that it makes you think about all of those sorts of things, and the way that the characters within the world exist. Like, they're very authentic and feel like they're really from this place. They all have unique cultures and voices, and I liked that about it a lot.
That's kind of a big point I wanted to make. Hey, can we talk about Silver Savage?
Yes.
How cool is that?
He's awesome. Really cool. He uses his surfboard as a shield. It's awesome.
It's so good. Yeah, can we just get to the superficial stuff that we love? Silver, that is the coolest thing. And the thing I couldn't get, because I didn't know about that. I've never read this. And the thing I couldn't get my mind around was, wait, so in Ragnarok, we replaced Silver Surfer with Thor in his own movie?
Yeah, and it's weird. In the Planet Hulk animated movie, they replaced Silver Surfer with Beta Ray Bill because apparently of rights issues or something.
Austin was telling me about it. Isn't it weird when you can't use Thor, but you can use Beta Ray Bill?
Yeah, it's so weird.
I don't understand that. I want to watch that and do a commentary on it in the not too distant future because I've never seen it.
I wonder if that's why.
I wanted to read this before I did, so I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
Because is Beta Ray Bill one of the faces in the Thor Ragnarok, like when they do like the big tower of faces? Is that I want maybe a reference to that? I know Man Thing's there. I didn't pay attention to the rest of the ones, but I know that he was there.
Yeah, he is there. But isn't that movie much more disappointing after reading this?
Well, I was gonna say I'm glad I didn't do this because I don't want to just turn off a bunch of fans of that movie to this video immediately as we start. What I wanted to do, Dan, was to say, give each of you guys the floor and let you gush about this and be like, well, this book actually made me angry like the Hulk. Because this should have just been a movie straight up, and I'm never going to see that. And it's really sad that Ragnarok just kind of pays lip service to it and uses it more for the sake of visual cues and stuff. Like, Hulk kind of has I don't even know if I want to say character arc in that, but he's dealing with a little bit of the same conflict, sort of, but like it doesn't even start from the same place. Like as soon as he sends himself into space, as opposed to being shot into space, it's a totally different kind of situation.
It's in a terrestrial plane. It's not in a spacecraft that he goes to space in.
There's also that,
I'm pretty sure in Age of Ultron, it also, like, at the ending says that Hulk crashed the plane and they just found it wrecked. But I could be misremembering that.
I've heard people say that, but I don't know if that's actually, because I don't remember. I have to go back and look. Zephyro in the comments there, hi there, it says, we did get a Planet Hulk movie, though. Yeah, the animated thing, but that could have been a wonderfully epic MCU movie, and you say, oh, well, distribution rights, they weren't allowed at the time to make a singular Hulk movie, even though I guess they're talking about somehow doing one now, and, but couldn't you have still kind of cheated the way they cheated and still done kind of this story? Like, you could have just made it more Hulk-centric, or made it more of a, like, dual character piece with Thor and Hulk, and done a lot of what this book has. And I mean, like, yes, I'd love to see this transferred almost directly scene for scene, because, or if not scene for scene, like, you know, act for act, because it does read really cinematic. It is the right structure for a film. The coda would have been amazing and mind-blowing to people for an MCU movie. And, like, you've got to make certain compromises when you adapt anyway, but I don't think it would have been a horrible compromise to make this story a dual protagonist piece with Hulk and Thor, and just make it a Thor movie. I think you still could have done that, and to shove this into Ragnarok, like the Simonson story, is a slap in the face to both of them.
Well, it's because Ragnarok is the X3 thing, where you take two plots that are completely separate, and then you just jam them together, and neither gets the focus that they deserve.
Yeah, they don't go together. I mean, you essentially have the same... I never thought of this. You essentially have the same problem you do with the first two movies, where we spend too much time on Earth, and we need to deal with Asgard and be in Asgard. That movie spent too much time in Planet Hulk!
No, that's what I said, because... that's what I said when it came out, because Ragnarok is basically a remake of that first film, where Thor is just stuck on a planet without his hammer and his powers, except it's this gladiator planet instead of Earth.
Yeah, and I do see the logic in combining this with Thor to some degree, because the world of Planet Hulk is so inspired by fantasy, and Thor obviously is too, and it's also got that science fantasy thing like the Jack Kirby Thor stuff does, and even the Simonson stuff, because like Beta Ray Bill is an alien in that. There's like spaceships and stuff, so I see the logic in that, but I agree that combining that specifically with like Surtur coming back and creating Ragnarok is, you know, it needs more focus than that. To be as interesting as it is in this book, like, you need a world-building movie for this planet, you know?
Yeah, and, I mean, maybe that would have seemed a little bit too close to some of what Guardians does, but then, you know, I don't know, just wait on it. Like, take some time.
I mean, Marvel could have basically just made the Warcraft movie I wanted, just like a movie about an orc that's a savage barbarian. That the first movie wanted to be, but like they had to put in all the boring human stuff.
Yeah, like
Yeah, exactly.
Civil War, you had to do a lot of revision and change a lot of stuff because it's not a great story in the first place, and all those characters are in such different places and stuff that like you'd have to tell a different story.
Yeah.
This resets, like you said earlier, Dan, a board and puts Hulk in it. You don't have to do hardly anything to it at all.
I think it would have been cool if they did a Planet Hulk movie and your thing after Thanos is World War Hulk.
Yeah.
Like, that's the next event. Like, it's tragic. The Hulk has been turned against the Avengers, and that's, like, the big threat that they have to face in one of the Avengers movies. That would have been awesome.
I also weirdly think, and I'm not saying they really should have done this necessarily, but ironically, I actually think it would have been easier to shoehorn World War Hulk into something else than shoehorning this into something else, because all you really have to do is go Thanos or some other existential threat shows up, and conveniently Hulk shows up at the same time to also attack everyone. And the Thanos like, well, this is convenient. He also wants them dead, and like it would almost be easier to combine those.
Yeah, and it's going to be weird too. Like, they're talking about doing a World War Hulk adaptation in the MCU now, and I think it's basically going to be the Loeb sequel called World War Hulks, where it's like a civil war between all of his Hulk characters, most of which he created during his run, like Red Hulk and Red She-Hulk. And
who cares?
Like A-Bomb.
Yeah, A-Bomb. I think Scar, Hulk's son, shows up for that. Jennifer Walters is there. So supposedly people are saying, the rumor is that the She-Hulk show sets up some of that stuff. So I don't know.
With all due respect to Loeb or whoever, A-Bomb is the dumbest sounding name for a character.
It's Rick Jones transformed into a blue abomination, and he's a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that name's an abomination. That's awful. I'm A-Bomb. Try saying that with a straight face in a costume to somebody when you're fighting. Hey, A-Bomb!
I remember when I created A-Bomb.
Yeah, it's short for abomination.
Oh, I didn't think of... Okay. I mean, that's at least comic clever. Does that have a hyphen?
Oh, no, that's just a thing that I said.
If they
his
were
name's
thinking
an
of that, though, if he
abomination,
was
like
supposed
you
to
said.
be an abomination and then they called him A-Bomb because that's the start of Abomination, that's better.
Yeah, and he's a rapper.
He sounds like a rat. Yeah, absolutely.
He's Lil A-Bomb.
I adored this story. I really did.
Yeah,
and I mean, like people talk about this all the time, and I got kind of tired of it being the only Hulk story anybody ever brought up, and it's one of those things that I figured must be overrated. Yeah, it's not. It's that good. It really is.
Yeah.
There's hardly anything wrong with it. Like, I'm struggling to come up with complaints, and you know me, I'm the most critical person on the planet. It is not hard for me to think of things to complain about.
We will make a Hulk
Pretty good.
fan out of Captain Logan yet, ladies and gentlemen.
I still don't think that's possible.
I think it is.
Somebody
I'll show you some
request
other
the
stuff.
Loeb run.
No, not the Loeb run. Stay far away.
I mean, what helps with this is that the setting is in my wheelhouse.
I want to show you Future Imperfect, the Peter David one, because it's like a sci-fi dystopian future, and I think you would like it.
Well, and of course, I mean, I love Peter David, and he's
Yeah.
a great science fiction writer, and he's written some of the best non-canon Star Trek stuff there's ever been. Like, I don't know if you know just how much Star Trek Peter David has been involved in,
Yeah.
but like, when
You
you
told
say,
me that you're
sci-fi
more
with
comfortable.
Hulk, I'm like, well, yes, of course. Like, I'm gonna like Peter David. I mean, Peter David Spider-Man 2099. Like, it's...
Yeah. No, the Future Imperfect series is a 3-issue miniseries, and it's self-contained, so you can just read that on its own, and it's pretty digestible.
There's also a TNG episode called Future Imperfect, and there's no way he doesn't know that.
I agree. That's probably true.
I mean, the premise is not anything
also,
like the same, but yeah.
It's also in the Avengers game.
That's right. It is. He's the Maestro. Evil Emperor Hulk is the final boss of that DLC.
You have the Hawkeye DLC.
I think Zephyro in the comments there is talking about the A-bomb thing. He says, he had to have been thinking about that name his entire life post-Hulk existing, and that is what he came up with.
You know what we're going to get in the MCU, probably, since they're doing all these Hulk characters, apparently? We'll get the Agents of Smash.
Yep. That's unfortunate. I like the part in this where Hulk said Hulk slash.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
He's got a sword, and he's super clever in this. That's another thing I really appreciated is that Hulk's not just like a big lumbering monster. Like, he's kind of clever and he's kind of a badass.
Yeah, he is.
He's got a lot of zingers.
He is not in Ragnarok. And
he's
MCU
wonderfully sarcastic.
Moving after that.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, I think Ragnarok will be harder for me to watch after this because now, you had Planet Hulk, you had material that I wasn't familiar with encroaching on material that I adore that the movie didn't seem interested in. And now I also kind of adore this. And it feels like a couple of things butchered and sandwiched together.
It's the worst of both worlds.
It's like you had two children and they put them in a blender.
I know people like that movie. I'm sorry.
And you had to drink it.
Oh, I also like that running gag where people don't know what sandwiches are.
Yeah, that was funny. There are moments of levity in this, despite how dark and heavy it gets, which is nice.
Well, and it's wonderfully absurd all over.
Well, and that's the thing, right? One of the things that I don't like about the MCU take on the Hulk is they turned him into what basically every MCU character, where he's like a jokey, sarcastic, hey, I'm a self-aware guy kind of person. And this is a story where the Hulk is still the dark, tragic monster that I like the character for. And there are funny moments, and the world around him, like you said, has absurdist elements in it that are fun, over-the-top science fiction action-y stuff and fantasy iconography. You can still have a story that's about dark things that has humor and have the characters be who they are and not make them all feel like the same person.
Yeah, well, and it all felt like ingredients of the same pie. Yeah. I say pie because we were talking about things being layered earlier. But it doesn't have to, whenever we have levity in this book, it feels like mixed together with everything else. It doesn't feel like we're interrupting everything to tell a joke and then we move on.
Yeah, it's not the boardroom's joke quota for the movie,
Yeah, and
every 15 minutes the audience must laugh. Put a scene in.
Yeah, well, because if it did that, you would think that some of the splash pages would be like comedy splash pages. That never happens. The jokes are always integrated. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you can't ever have jokey splash pages, but it would have been inappropriate for this book.
No, absolutely. Because the tone is serious. It plays it straight, despite how, like you said, absurd some of the situations are.
Real quick, one thing we haven't talked about yet is the artists here. We have two different artists, and I wanted to ask if you guys noticed that.
I did.
I did, yeah. At one point, I was like, "Oh, the art's different."
I didn't find the art change to be super drastically different, to the point where it took me out. But I could tell when it changed. It's kind of interesting how it changes. We've got Cario Pagliulian. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He draws the first and third of the 4-issue arcs, and then sandwiched in the middle, I want to just keep saying sandwich, is Aaron Lopresti. And then here's the weird thing: when you get to the fourth story, the two-parter at the end, it's just 2 issues. It's both of those guys. The first guy does the second guy does the first issue, and the first guy does the second issue.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And somehow I didn't catch that. But so I don't know. The art change wasn't super jarring.
Yeah, I didn't find
it wasn't terrible.
I think I like the first guy a little bit better.
I think so too, if that's who I'm thinking.
I think I like his action better, but I also think his art kind of improves some in his second set. I mean, some of that's just because he's drawing the most epic stuff in that section.
Very true. I love the covers for this series too. They're incredibly cool looking. Like,
And they all have the monster, the old school Monster Hulk phase.
yeah, one of my favorite ones is the like Hulk as like a Roman statue, like as like as a king, and like he's in like um this like jungle place where vines are growing around it, like he's the king of an old dead civilization. I was like, oh, it's so cool.
No, it's great.
Yeah, this story is like exactly what I love about the Hulk in theme and character, in like a really cool package. And if um if anyone wants to get into the Hulk, I think this is, like you said earlier, Cap, a really good place to start. It's kind of a proof of concept, showing you like what the character's internal struggle is, and what his stories are usually about.
Yeah, I get why this is considered one of the, if not the seminal run for a lot of people. I mean, I think a lot of people still wouldn't put it above Peter David necessarily if they know Peter David, but modern readers that never went back, I can see why this would be the thing that they tout up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. This is one of the first things I read when I got like really into comics as a teenager, because I love the Hulk. And this was much more accessible at the time than the Peter David stuff. They had just started reprinting that in trades. There was only like 2 of those Masterwork volumes out, so you could only read like 20 issues. But this was like a very self-contained thing, and it's awesome.
And it's weird because I think Greg Pak as a writer is somewhat unappreciated, because I hear this come up all the time as a great book, but I don't hear his name in the list of like remenders and ruckas and like I know I've read other stuff by him, but like nothing immediately comes to mind. It's like what other like what major stuff has he read? What big runs does Pak have?
I think just this, really. I know he's writing the Darth Vader book at Marvel currently.
Oh, okay.
Um, but he's done a bunch of Hulk stuff. Like he's kind of on that book on and off. Like he did the Totally Awesome Hulk book where Amadeus Cho was the Hulk for a while.
Oh, was that him?
Like, yeah, that was him.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because Amadeus Cho, I think, is a creation of his, but he's like a pretty prominent character in the World War Hulk miniseries. So
yeah, it's a story in that issue 100. I didn't read that part because it wasn't connected to Planet Hulk, but I did see that he got his own little thing.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna look him up real quick and see what other stuff I know from him, because it seems like he's kind of known as more of, maybe I'm wrong about this, but it seems like he's kind of known as more of like a workman writer, and this is way better than that. I mean,
it is. Yeah.
This has to be one of the best runs in Marvel in that decade.
I think so, for sure.
When you know what he didn't write, Cap?
Oh, what's that?
The Dark Knight Rises novelization. That was Greg Cox.
Right. That was great. Would you stop bringing that up? Would you stop it?
Wait, what are you talking about?
It doesn't matter. He does this. I don't know why I still have Austin on, honestly. I don't.
That was our code if Cap...
He's still bringing this up.
If Cap didn't put the art from the book on the screen when he showed it to everybody, that was the code, was I had to mention that Greg Cox wrote the Dark Knight Rises novelization.
Is that true?
Yes, yeah. It is. Oh, and it's one of the worst things ever, and I'm thinking about for the anniversary of Dark Knight Rises this year, because we're in the 10th anniversary for that movie somehow. I'm thinking about reading some of that book on camera.
Ooh, you should. That'd be awesome.
It's horrifying. It seems like for Marvel, he hasn't written a lot of... he's written a lot, but it seems like he has been given kind of more workman assignments. Austin, he wrote the Marvel Nemesis Imperfects miniseries.
That's weird.
Oh, that's really funny.
And
I loved that game as a kid. And it's really funny because Hulk's not in that game, so I don't know if he would be in that book.
He had a run on Weapon X just a couple of years ago. with Greg Land. Like, they're giving him really workman stuff.
Oh, and they put him with Greg Land.
Yeah, and it's weird because we think these days of a lot of the old guard major writers, particularly at Marvel, kind of having left to do creator-owned stuff, and like it's a really big deal when they ever bring back a Hickman or something, because so many of those guys are disenfranchised and not remotely interested in working for the big two anymore, and then you've got guys like that who've written one of the best runs ever for this character, at least, if not at Marvel, and he's still there just doing stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how his Darth Vader book is, but I've heard that it incorporates stuff from the sequel trilogy. Like, they have that planet that Palpatine is on in Rise of Skywalker in it. I was like, no, I don't know if I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. He's been writing Firefly for Boom. I'm interested in that.
Interesting.
Because I'm a big fan of Firefly, and I actually used to collect Firefly comics, but I dropped off of that at one point. But having read this, he seems like a really good fit for that material potentially, like space western, like yeah.
It's brown coat Captain Logan.
John Ty, why that accent? $5 super chat. What are your thoughts with the Illuminati's decision to shoot Bruce into space? So, did you hear the question, John Ty? What are your thoughts about the Illuminati's decision to shoot Bruce into space? For the sake of this story, I like it a lot. I like our heroes being morally ambiguous and in the background, and from the Hulk's perspective right now, they're kind of as bad as they think he is. For the sake of the larger Marvel universe, if I were reading this at the time, I might think it was a bridge too far, and it seems very influenced by what Mark Millar and those guys were doing at Ultimate in the time. Like, the timing is really interesting, that you've got like super morally ambiguous stuff going on with the like standard 616 characters at the same time as like really morally ambiguous stuff is going on with like the Ultimates and stuff. So that would have been my first thought, but I haven't heard their side of it yet. So I'm kind of withholding judgment because all I've read is this.
If I were a part of the Illuminati, I would have a whole list of people I would shoot into space. So I can get down with that.
Who would be first on your list?
Well, just because you asked, now it's you.
Plushy SDX says the Illuminati are crazy though. Yeah, but they're made up of some of, like, you know, the most major, like, you wouldn't consider super morally ambiguous characters. I mean, I've read a couple things with the Illuminati, and I get that they're like that, but like, this is early enough. I don't know if we would have even understood what they were as an entity yet.
I don't know much about the Illuminati because I haven't read all of Bendis' Avengers run, and that's where all that stuff comes from.
All I know is that they each hide Infinity Stones.
That's the big thing I know about.
That's all I remember about them.
Yeah. Certainly for Charles Xavier and Mr. Fantastic, like, they're no strangers to moral ambiguity.
That's true, but I don't think of Mr. Fantastic as that morally ambiguous. But
yeah, that's probably true.
Like, way more so in Ultimate when he becomes, you know, one of the scariest villains ever.
Yeah.
Well, this is post-Civil War, so Tony Stark's completely thrown under the bus in general.
That's true.
So he would be down for
He's
this.
just a villain at this point, yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially. But yes, I mean, I love morally ambiguous Professor X, so I'm totally okay with any scary evil thing they want to do with him.
You should work at Marvel and just have that be the title you work on. The morally ambiguous Professor X.
Oh my god, that's such a good title! I mean, it's a terrible title, but after you can do Superior Spider-Man, anything is on the table.
I remember when we wrote the morally ambiguous Professor X.
I want the whole title to be
really
hyphenated.
Attracted to Jean Grey.
I want hyphens between every word.
Are you ready for morally ambiguous Patrick Stewart, Professor X?
I'm gonna talk about that on Thursday. I don't know about that. I don't trust him.
Yeah, of course not.
On the surface of it, I'm open-minded, but I don't want them to do that. He got such a good send-off before. There's no reason to bring any of that back. Like,
But
don't just.
before that, there wasn't a dump truck of money on his lawn.
Well, I mean, I always hate to say this. Like, I don't want to be labeled as ageist or whatever. But the man's 82 years old. What does he need with a truck full of money?
I mean, his wife is like half his age.
That's true. He's got to leave her something.
He has a legacy. Legacy. To
Yeah.
keep.
And if he had even more money, he could find a new wife that's half her age.
I'm kind of, I don't know. I can't get excited about seeing Patrick Stewart in anything anymore. I'm kind of mad at him over Picard, and I think I always will be. Like, I'm disillusioned with that actor now. He's still my favorite actor as an actor.
To like push the chair forward, because he can't do that as well.
He should have never let that show happen, and I blame him for at least a quarter of everything that's wrong with that show.
We need you to hope again, Captain.
Well, tough luck. We're done with that. Anyway, hey, anything else about this book that we need to talk about before I get really depressed and I slip my wrist on camera?
Hulk rides a T-Rex. That was pretty awesome. We have a Hulk.
Wait, Hulk rides a T-Rex in this?
Yeah, he's got the big T-Rex thing that he like rides on.
Okay, I guess I missed that, or it didn't register to me that it looked like a T-Rex, but I was going to earlier, and I'll make this brief. Earlier I was going to refer to Old Man Logan, because I was seeing some parallels to that a little bit, and it's just weird that there's a T-Rex in both of those things.
Not a Venom T-Rex this time though, so that's pretty lame.
That's
Thanks
true.
for ruining the T-Rex.
Once you combine Venom and a T-Rex, you can't do anything cool with a T-Rex after that. Nothing after that is cool. No,
T-Rex,
and that's all, and that's Mark Millar, who I mentioned earlier. But it's kind of interesting that in a way, the end of this story is the beginning of Old Man Logan, where it's like Wolverine finally settles down and is able to live peacefully and has a good life, and then everything's taken away from him.
Yeah.
And that's the end of this story.
Yep. And then you get 4 issues of Smashing, and there's not much substance.
Well, I mean, maybe we should do a follow-up and review that at some point, because it sounds like that'll take 5 minutes. But
yeah, it's.
But I haven't read it, so
I think it's only like 4 or 5 issues, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Maybe
we'll read all the time.
We're gonna find out it's 19 issues.
Like
we're gonna find out it's longer than this, but
that.
there's so much Smashing that Dan read it in the time it would have taken to read 4 issues.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Austin. What did you say?
Oh no, I was looking at World War Hulk on Marvel Unlimited, and it has it as like 80 issues from all the tie-ins, so we can just read all the tie-ins.
I don't think we're gonna do that.
Oh,
That
okay.
is like the.
I will.
I can't believe they did that many tie-ins for that book. That was insane. Like it's.
Yeah, it's like Ghost Rider, Iron Man, like X-Men, just the morally ambiguous Professor X ties in.
Well, I think what probably happened was the Civil War tie-ins sold so well that's when they decided they had to start doing that for every major event. Because from then on, everything does that. And that would have
Planet Hulk should have had a bunch of tie-ins where it's just characters doing their thing, but you also know that somewhere Hulk is doing this. And that's just the tie-in.
I've read tie-ins like that.
The Wolverine Civil War tie-ins.
Oh, real quick, speaking of events, I would be curious to go back and see what Secret Wars did with this, because I read several of the event tie-ins with that, and I really liked what they did with Civil War, by the way, with that. But I didn't read this one because I'd never read Planet Hulk, so I'm a little curious to check that out now.
Hell yeah. Do it up.
I don't know who wrote it.
Pak might have wrote it, but I'm not sure.
I think they tended to give them to people that didn't write the originals, but I might be wrong about that. I forget. I mean, it's been a long time.
True.
I'm curious now though, because some of those were really good. Some of them were not. The Infinity Gauntlet one was not so great, but anyway.
At least it wasn't him being talked out of his plan by Black Panther.
Oh, I've buried all that. I don't think about that. We don't talk about that here.
Bury me, man.
I didn't even know what you were talking about for a second. I was like, oh, that's right. I'm not gonna go back and look at that again if I can help it. Well, anyway, everybody, yes, folks, we do know that there's a Planet Hulk movie. I will do something on that in the not too distant future. Everybody, thanks as always for watching. Sure appreciate it. We will see you again real soon with more videos here on Geekvolution. I'll be doing a Captain Logan show on Thursday. No live show tomorrow night because I'm in the middle of preparing for a writing meeting this week. So a little bit lighter on the videos. And then I'm out of town this weekend. So Austin and I are going to do a video game movie for the Mania on Friday, and then I'll be out over the weekend and back for another ReQuest on Tuesday. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and thanks again to Elliot Slater for the request. He was here earlier. It turns out that that's actually 5590ERS in the comments, who's in the live shows all the time. So thanks a lot.
I don't know how you remembered that.
Yeah.
Because he's in the. I wasn't even looking at it. Because he's in the comments a lot, and I've heard DJ say his name a bunch of times.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
the Supreme Conference of Jesse Ventura or something like 0544S.
Yeah,
I should have
was
said
the
it like
name.
that.
That was the default password for your Wi-Fi.
Maybe it's his. I don't know.
You just like rolled it off like that.
That name was developed by the finest minds of Minnesota.
I honestly don't think I could actually rattle off my actual Wi-Fi password as quickly as I did that.
That might be his.
That's what I was saying.
He was like, I need a YouTube name.
My social security
I'll put in my social security number along with a bomb. No one will know.
I think this is the first request that has a requested review, and then we just roasted the requester.
It's not my fault. I apologize. Anyway, thanks again for watching, folks. We'll see you again next time. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
My Wi-Fi password is 6583BBCA556.
See, you still didn't rattle that off as fast as
I know. I got stopped.
And
Started out good.
Dan, thanks a bunch for popping in and doing this with us, man.
Of course, yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for having me, guys. And
anytime, buddy.
Yeah, if you think of anything else in the future, let me know. And Cap and I are going to do that Conan podcast too. We're going to do the Jason Aaron Conan run, so that'll be fun too. I'm excited about that.
I like Jason Aaron. I don't know anything about Conan, but I like Jason Aaron.
You don't have to. It's pretty accessible. It's designed to be such. So I think you'll get stuff out of it.
I will let everybody know when that's happening because that'll be over on Dan's Conan channel.
Very cool.
You don't send me to the cooler.
See you later, folks. Bye.
Bye.